time I did this, I was a senior in college, and it was baccalaureate at Pepperdine, and wow, this is fun to see all you. Every single one here, I feel like there's this great deep connection, so thank you for being here. Okay, so before we get started, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, right. I've seen this done, so I'm going to try it, but I have a trivia question. Who is the first one to raise your hand to get it right to know Kevin's age? How old is my brother Kevin? Well, my dad, you can't play. You can't play. Diana.
46?
Okay, good guess, but no. Kristen. Close.
53.
Okay, you didn't raise your hand, Michael. Whoever, okay. Oh, what do I do? You didn't raise your hand, but you're right.
I was out of order.
Yeah, Kristen was close. Okay, should we let Michael have it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Here's your book. It was right about when you give it to him.
Okay.
All right, so to begin, I wrote a book. We don't have time for those Undue applause, so I'm just trying to be on the watch here so you guys can have fun to like eat and drink and all that. And no kids, it's not AI. Good music. That was supposed to be funny, but it didn't work. And yes, it took me 11 years. But does the world really need another book? Let alone one on suffering? Well, I love books. I have shelves full of them in my home, and about 12 next to my bedside, all half read and all in process. I read slowly and always with a pen to underline powerful takeaways that I get. And I think I got this from my dad. In his retirement days, he reads several books a week, sometimes a day, and has also revisited each of his underlines that he made decades ago. So if you're looking for an idea to do in your retirement, there you go. In these days of 24/7 smartphone access, making time to read can be challenging. We are easily entertained by and somewhat addicted to these tiny computers in our hands, which I was supposed to have in my hand, but I don't, so pretend I have a phone. But yet books hold something different. They hold deep treasures within the paragraphs that extend beyond headlines and sound bites. Growing up in an academic world of professors at Pepperdine University, I was always around a culture that honored books and learning. I just never imagined that I would write a book, let alone one that's published. And I never knew I had so much to say. How in the world did this book end up being 364 pages? But don't worry, there are pictures. Thank you for being here today. I'm really blown away by the variety of people that is here. To get a feel for the room, I just want you all to see a few of the people that mean so much to me. So I'm not going to mention everybody, so don't take it personally. But I will say that there are people here who have known me since a very little girl. I will say, anybody here remembers me under the age of 10? Other than family. Yeah, Dad, you don't count, right? No. Okay, let's go to the next level. Who was my youth pastor in high school? Raise your hand. Ricky Rowland, right there. And next to him, his sister, Roxanne, taught me to put on mascara. Wow. And my mother knew that she hired her to do a special thing for a bunch of our friends. But it's so much fun to see her today. High school friends, raise your hand. Michelle, oh my gosh, Michelle, Roger, Julie, Kathy. Thank you guys for being here. It's Michelle and I sang in a trio together. Roger and I talked on the phone for hours every night and when I didn't want to do the dishes. Julie and I served ice cream together at Swenson's Ice Cream in Westlake. So it's really fun to see you guys. My dear pastor is here. Raise your hand. Where are you, Reggie? He dug ditch? Oh my gosh, okay. All right, he and Mary are here. Mary's in the back. And I will say a very special person. Alex, would you raise your hand? Alex is my brother Kevin's caregiver, and he's been working at Momentum how many years? 34. 34 years. Stand up, Alex, stand up. And Kevin, is Alex good to you? Alex is like a brother to my brother, and there's nobody more special to my heart than someone who loves my brother. So thank you for caring for him. You do the hard stuff. You do the real deal. So there's a special place in heaven for you and everybody like you who cares for people like my brother. So thank you. And then Nikki's family, are you guys here? Okay, all right, well, I tried. She grew up with Kevin, and I think they're coming. And she's no longer with us, but they're amazing people. But it is my honor to have everybody here meet my brother Kevin. So Kevin, Jonathan, can you just turn Kevin around? And let's all just say hello to Kevin, who is the inspiration for my book. Kevin. He doesn't like to smile on command, but you will catch him smiling today. Most of my family is here as well. My husband, Jonathan. Without him, this day would not have happened. He believed in me when I did not believe in myself. And he encouraged me to do this, so thank you. My dad, Jerry Yates, wave your hands, Dad. I believe he has read this book in every different form, probably more than anybody. He's always showed such an interest, and I'm so happy that he and my brother are both here today. That was one of my goals, that they would both be here and healthy. So it's wonderful. My dad's girlfriend, Barbara, she's done amazing things to support our family and even this place. She's helped do a lot of wonderful things for it. I'm thrilled to have two of my three children here. Abigail, wave. This is my middle daughter, Abigail. She is a new lawyer, just took the bar, and moved to Chicago on us. So, and Oliver just graduated from Baylor, and he's looking for a job. If anybody has a good offer, he has a really good resume. And then my daughter Madeline, my oldest, she lives in North Carolina, Raleigh area, and she and her husband Ingram are couldn't be here today. They've been doing a lot of traveling, and so they couldn't make this one, but they've been wonderful and supportive. And I'm honored to have a few of my endorsers here today as well. Brad Cummings, where are you? There you are. Brad is the co-author of The Shack and the producer of The Shack the movie. And a really dear friend from Pepperdine, he and Kelly, and he's been a great advice giver on when it comes to writing. He is a great author himself. Also the editor of the Founders Bible, if you didn't know that. I don't know if Sarah Jackson, is she here yet? Not yet. Okay. Well, tell her I mentioned her. Sarah Jackson's the chancellor of Pepperdine, and she is an endorser as well, and dear relationship with them through the years. Kristen Cummins. Yay! Kristen is my dear friend, a trauma psychotherapist, and if you want a free therapy session, I just figured out with my daughter's help to load it on my website last night. You can watch that. But she's been an amazing support, and her endorsement makes you cry. Pastor Reggie, are you back yet? Oh my goodness, he's busted. All right, well, he is also an endorser. He's a great guy. And then is Lori here? I don't think Lori's here, right? Lori Anderson, the CEO of Momentum, is also an endorser. So with that set aside, I want to say, people ask me a lot, why did you write the book? I am not sure I have a great soundbite answer. Welcome to me. But I do know it began in August of 2013. It was then when my husband and I dropped off our oldest daughter in Texas for college. We all experienced an emotional goodbye beyond what I had been prepared for. Yet what none of us expected was that 2 weeks later, my mom had had a massive stroke and left our world a few days after that. It is days like today that I realized how much I missed her. I'm wearing her necklace, if anybody can recognize it. So that 3-week period, though, left me in a grief unlike any I had ever known. Strangely, I found myself doing something I'd never done before. I began furiously typing memories on my computer, with tears streaming down my face. What surprised me most was that these memories were about my brother Kevin. Having been born with cerebral palsy, quadriplegic, he was placed in a care facility. It was called Spastic Children's Foundation, United Cerebral Palsy back then. And he was only 3.5 years old, and I was 6. It was as if these memories had been locked inside of me, and now in my state of grief, they were pouring out like a dam finally breaking. I couldn't stop. Before I knew it, the sentences had paragraphs, and then chapter headings, and then my life began to have a little bit of clarity, maybe even purpose, beneath the tangled emotions I hadn't realized I was carrying. The original title of the book was simply, Why? But as it turns out, I wasn't exactly the first one to come up with that title. So a new title was in order, and interestingly, it evolved over the years, just as I did. Up until that point, I had not realized that Kevin's impact on me would become the most character-defining imprint on my life, as well as the catalyst for my journey towards emotional wholeness. As I pressed into the process of writing, I began to realize my story was for others also. Yet I questioned how something from me could help others when I came without any real pedigree. I was not a psychologist, nor a professor, definitely not a YouTube influencer, or a Hollywood star. And I never ended up getting that graduate degree I always assumed I needed to have to be considered credible. No doubt this was a result of growing up in a university environment where I just assumed in order to amount to anything, you had to have a doctorate degree. The only authority I had, though, was being Kevin's sister. You can see his smile right now. That's what I live for right there. His sister and my takeaways from being a sister. The words spilled onto the computer screen in a raw form, a bit messy and jumbled, clearly reflecting that I was in a transformative state. I didn't know it at the time, but I was wriggling around a lot in my own cocoon. My story comes without everything tied up in a bow and without all the answers, yet that could be a part of the appeal. Because some things in life remain mysteries, and the journey itself and what it yields is often the destination. About halfway through my writing decade, we had dinner with some good friends. It was there that out of our rich conversation, the phrase secondhand suffering was birthed. You probably get it by now, but for a quick refresher, remember when people used to think of smokers as the only one affected by smoke? We later learned that not only them, but others in their vicinity are also affected. Enter stage right, secondhand suffering. Not only the sufferer suffers, but those around them as well. But unlike smoke, emotional suffering is invisible, but it doesn't mean it's less damaging. I define secondhand suffering as the silent anguish, the heavy emotional burden that grips our hearts when someone we love suffers. When I first heard this phrase, it resonated deeply within me, and in a short second, I thought to myself, yes, that's it. That's what I'm feeling. That nails it. There's a name for this. I'm not crazy. By giving language to this emotion, I've seen people like me finally feel legitimate in experiencing something they've always had but kept pent up inside. Naming it unlocks a sense of validation, making the entry point for a new conversation and a path towards a healing process. By a show of hands, I'm just curious, how many of you are in a current situation where you personally are feeling the weight of secondhand suffering? Wow, it's a good half. It's a good half of people. And then how many of you know someone right now who's experiencing that for someone else? Wow, it's like almost all of you. Just last week, several of you may have heard the heart cry of Dodger first baseman Freddie Freeman when his son suffered a sudden serious illness, and Freddie said, he didn't deserve this. No one deserves this. Anybody who goes through this. It's just not my family. It's others. We were going every night, and every room is filled in the pediatric ICU, and that is heartbreaking. It just puts everything in perspective. I know Dodger fans won't like this, but I would gladly strike out with the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth inning in Game 7 of the World Series 300 million times in a row than to see that again. I think we all get Freddie's sentiment. There may be nothing worse than seeing someone you love suffer without relief and without being able to fix it, let alone observing an intensive care unit full of precious children hanging onto their lives. Over the last year, I began telling friends that I was writing a book, and they naturally would ask me, what's your book about? At first, I would pause and try to figure out how to exactly explain this multifaceted thing that I can't really articulate unless it has 364 pages. But still, that didn't stop me from uttering a whole lot of diverse sentences to try to explain. As I was throwing out a lot of the pieces of words that just felt like pasta hitting a wall and see what stuck. This process left me frustrated and exhausted. Why couldn't I explain this better? Out of sheer laziness, I finally decided, I'm just gonna tell them the book title, let them figure it out. I know it was long, but my explanations were longer. What I found next was fascinating. Their reactions were visceral, often having a pregnant pause as they comprehended the meaning behind the words. I didn't need to explain anything more. Remember your reaction. A couple of people got a tear in their eye, others said wow, and many began to say, I totally get that. And they would go on to share their own specific flavor of secondhand suffering. I'm sure you can imagine, but anything from caring with a parent with a cognitive decline, or a child on the spectrum, or a spouse with a cancer, or an adult child going through a bitter divorce, the stories are endless. I quickly realized my book's topic was triggering something in people. With secondhand suffering, many of us haven't felt seen because we're not really the ones with the illness, or the disability, or the life-limiting condition. We also don't feel worthy of any diagnosis because we believe that we're the, quote, normal ones. But the reality is that we also suffer. And when we do, we sometimes can feel alone and invisible, and then we feel guilty for that. As a fellow social science major, I enjoy much of Brené Brown's thoughts on complex emotions. I couldn't agree more when she said, never underestimate the power of being seen. This is part of the appeal of my book's topic, I believe. Caregivers, loved ones, they shoulder a lot. Some of it is physical, a lot emotional. It is not that we want attention, but we do long to be understood. That is what I mean by feeling seen. Often this group of people, I think all of us can fit in this category, are also in need of support, just as we support others. But even more than being understood, all of us, no matter who we are, deeply long for hope. But not the fleeting, sugary sweet hope found on a Hallmark card, no offense to Hallmark. But instead, I've discovered the kind of hope that requires a journey through, not around, the depths of empathetic pain. While I love being with friends, I love laughing, I love doing fun things, I think I've grown the most during the times that look like what St. John of the Cross used to call the dark night of the soul. Watching my brother live confined to a chair, without a voice or a working body, enduring isolation, boredom, being unable to scratch an itch, turn over in bed or use his hands or legs, all of this while enduring countless hospital stays and health battles, has affected me as a secondhand sufferer. Allowing myself to walk through the cost of feeling true empathy for him took me places in my spirit that weren't possible if I just tuned it all out and settled for an emotional numbness in order to protect myself. I'm gonna pause right here. Brian, I forgot to mention you, and I'm so sorry. Brian is my brother, and he means the world to me. Brian, that was not in the plan. You are in here. Brian has been an incredible support to my brother Kevin over the years, and without him, I couldn't have done what I did. You're always my backup, Brian. I know we don't say this stuff much, but I love you, and I'm grateful you're here, and I didn't mean to leave you out. I know you felt like that sometimes, and you didn't deserve that. So thank you for letting me pause and say that. My brother Brian. We've both been through this. We look different on the outside, but we've both been through it, and we feel it. Sorry. Okay, I'm just gonna finish that. Start that sentence over. Allowing myself to walk through the cost of feeling true empathy for him took me places in my spirit that weren't possible if I had tuned it all out and settled for emotional numbness in order to protect myself. There is something powerful that happens when we love someone deeply. As beautifully said in my favorite musical, Les Miserables, to love another person is to see the face of God. The good news is that Kevin has rebounded from dire health emergencies countless times. Right, Kev? We battled through. I believe many of these times resulted because of my advocacy, not to lift me up, but because it's been something I've had to learn the hard way. Many of us have in our family. We've all done it. I believe that Kevin's smile never fails to light a room. I wish you guys could see it when he was smiling up here. He finds joy in the smallest of things. Right, Kevin? These wonderful small victories add infusions of joy into my life. And anyone who knows Kevin, and they provide wonderful times of respite for our family. However, to be honest, I think we will always worry about when the next shoe will drop. And when those times of shoes dropping have come up, often beginning with a phone call, I am reminded that the world's answers can only take me so far. Fixing outside circumstances can never be a measure of our inner peace, as at some point the circumstances change. Perfection this side of heaven is just not sustainable, no matter how hard we try. For me, I spent many years challenging the religious cliches and empty sound bites that failed to satisfy my soul. Instead, I traveled a path with my machete in hand, cutting through thorny bushes to eventually find not all the answers, but a discovery of and a deeper intimacy with God. Ultimately, my memory of sorts my memoir of sorts is a story about how suffering, whether first or second, can be a catalyst to a heart transformation, and a journey towards hope. I believe this book is best read not as a quick source of information, but as an invitation to immerse yourself in each chapter. Let it resonate within your own journey, allowing the experiences shared to touch your heart and be sort of a guide for you, whether you are already on a transformative path or just beginning one. I encourage you to sit through the questions and resources at the end of each chapter, if you dare. And if you have already gone through your trek to emotional wholeness, I hope this will provide new perspectives for you and perhaps a way to help a friend who may be needing to be seen, heard, or understood, and discover fresh hope that renews them. I'd like to share a thought I wrote towards the end of the book, which captures a glimpse of what may await you when you dare to suffer well with another. When we enter the deep space of an empathetic pain and sit in it for longer than a minute, we are invited to enter a sacred realm akin to the Holy of Holies, a place where we can tangibly sense the presence of God, His holiness, and His comforting love. Here our hearts connect with His, and His Spirit intertwines with ours. In this space of entanglement, our deepest cries mixed with our purest form of love for another person, and we find ourselves able to live in the space between heaven and earth, where the paradox of sadness and peace can coexist. Finally, I've been told one of the things that you do at a lunch party is to read a sample from your book. If it's okay, I would like to just read a story, one section, and don't worry, it's a little lighter, so I won't leave you crying. Okay, so, is that okay? Yeah. Okay. I have no idea how long this is going, but hopefully we're good. Okay, this is from chapter 4. I know some of you got the books early who pre-ordered, so thank you, by the way. If you've already read it, deal with it. If you hear it again. Books weren't supposed to come out until today. Chapter 4 is called Cultivating Empathy. It's a discipline, not just a feeling. And I start with a quote from Walt Whitman, who says, "I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person." I attended Pepperdine University in the late 1980s and spent most of my years there trying to figure out my major. Okay, we're gonna have to do the glasses thing. I thought I could, this is 16 font, this is not. I spent most of my years there trying to figure out my major. I think I may have won the record for switching majors the most times. The list included advertising, public relations, psychology, sociology, political science, organizational management, and perhaps a few more I can't remember. Kevin thinks that's fun. In my senior year, my advisor, for those of you who know Dr. Michael Gose, told me finally that he needed to figure out a major for me that included most all of these courses if I wanted to graduate in 4 years. It turned out that there was a little-known major that was as broad as they come, social science. Bingo, I'll take it. My favorite class within this major was sociology. Our teacher told us to think of an experiment we could do that would test people's reactions. It could be anything, and examples included living as a homeless person, standing backward in an elevator, or standing on a street corner in a clown costume singing opera. He recommended it be something we cared about and were curious to see how people would react. It didn't take me too long to think of my project. I decided to be my brother Kevin for a day. Since he is always on my mind, I thought perhaps having some kind of experience would help me to understand what he goes through on an intimate level. How would I pretend to be a quadriplegic with cerebral palsy for an entire day? Could I actually fool people? I called the director of the day program at the school my brother was attending at that time. Before he turned 18, he was bused to a center for what we always said handicapped kids, so I'm just gonna say that. I know apparently that's not okay anymore, I don't know why, but that's what we called them. So a center for handicapped kids for his school. I talked to the director about the project and wanted to do and asked her if she would agree to keep this secret and allow me to come for a day as a new student named Camille. She would not tell any of the workers or caregivers who I really was, and in exchange, I would agree to act the role the entire day as a fully handicapped cerebral palsy teen. Until the end of the day when we could confess the truth. While I had always secretly wanted to be an actress, and had only been in my high school play, where I won, just as a side note, Best Actress in a Minor Role in the musical Oliver. Most likely, due to me stunning the audience with my dramatic dying scene on the stage as Old Sally. Those in high school with me, anybody remember that? Yeah. They dragged me off the stage and my wig stayed on the stage. So I think they gave me the award more because they felt sorry for me, but they everybody laughed at that point after I died. I was not prepared for how hard, though, role-playing my brother would be. The day began with me being greeted in the parking lot by the director who secured my wheelchair. She rolled me in and introduced me to everyone as, quote, the new girl who was in an accident and enrolling into school. Essentially, she gave me a background story that sounded pretty legit and re-rolled me around to the place where my day would begin. Because this was my brother's school and he would have recognized me, we waited until a day when he wasn't there and we reported him and he was sick. No one there had ever seen me before, and it was a life-impacting experience, one I will never forget. I found myself focusing intently on Kevin and how he acted and must have thought. I guess the actors call this getting into character. It was a lot of work at first, since I am a verbal processor, and those who know me will appreciate how hard it was for me to be mute for a day. Don't laugh too hard. Like Kevin, I forced myself to stare at different people and objects for longer lengths of time than I normally would. I clenched my fist, my arms, and my body so that it looked like I had spasticity. My arms would stretch out in tightened extensions, and my head would droop to one side as my brother's does. My mouth would release drool on occasion because Kevin lacks muscle control, even over his mouth. I found myself making noises like Kevin, grunts and long vowel sounds in an attempt to make my voice heard, even though no one could understand me. And when they got me out of my wheelchair for physical therapy and laid me on the floor, I stiffened up and made myself very heavy to imitate Kevin's inability to bear any weight. Once I was lying on the mat, I found myself left there for a very long time, wondering what the point was other than to give me a break from my wheelchair. I remember the workers saying how heavy I was. I was about 21 years old and only 120 pounds. I missed that scale number. What I noticed, though, was mostly how the direct care staff talked about me as if I wasn't there. And with what seemed to be at the time, although I'm sure it wasn't meant to be this way, a condescending tone. They would raise their voice. This is not from Momentum, this is a different place, by the way. They would raise their voices as well as their pitch when they talked to me. It was like I was a deaf 2-year-old who only understood a foreign language. My most vivid experience, though, of the day was lunchtime. They pulled me up to the lunch table and began to feed me. I was horrified as they were serving stewed tomatoes. Really? Of all the foods out there, they had to pick tomatoes? Similar to Indiana Jones in the Raiders of the Lost Ark when he said, "Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes?" I was thinking the same thing about the tomatoes. The one food that I refused to eat my entire life. I couldn't stand tomatoes. Moreover, there was nothing worse on my list of most hated foods than stewed tomatoes. It was as if God had decided to test me that day. To really show me how poor Kevin must feel when he was fed something he didn't like. Like a smushed up ham sandwich they've been trying to do lately, right, Kevin? We're working on that. I knew I couldn't eat it, but how could I do this and not break my character? I wanted a time out to tell them this was all a big school experiment, and at the moment, I then paused and thought, all right, what would Kevin do if he didn't like something? And then it all made sense. Kevin often refused to eat certain foods. He would buckle up his lips as if they were in a locked safe. When the food came on the spoon towards his mouth, he would pucker up even tighter and not let any bit of the spoon in his mouth. He was stubborn. I could do this. At least it was worth a try. So I clenched my teeth, closed my lips, turned my head away, and made a weird noise as a spoon of slimy, mushy, cooked tomatoes headed my way. This was war. Unfortunately, before I knew it, the caregiver did the unthinkable. Feeling borderline abused and definitely outsmarted, she took her fingers and forced my mouth open and proceeded to shove the spoon in with brute force. Is this against the rules? Is it even allowed, I thought. Astonished and aghast, I had been defeated as the warm, watery, and squishy fruit touched my tongue. I thought I was going to vomit. So pulling out my next chess move, I did what I had seen Kevin do countless times. I spit out the tomatoes all over myself. I know this sounds gross, and it was, but I had hit my limit. The lady made some condescending remark and had the nerve to take the spoon, scoop it up, my regurgitated red droppings, and shove it back into my mouth. Could she not see that I didn't want these tomatoes in my mouth? Did I not get a vote? I was ready to forget the whole experiment and run out of there. But because I was a good A student, I stuck it out till the end of the day. Later that day, after I recovered from the tomato trauma, the director came over and gave me the cue that we could wrap it up. We had not rehearsed this, but the plan was for me to reveal my true self. I proceeded to stand up at her wink, and at that point, I realized my acting skills should have been Emmy nominated by the look on everyone's faces. The director then explained to me what we had been doing and that I was Kevin's sister. No one could believe it. And so I walked away feeling a little bit like Sandra Bullock. All in all, it was a humbling experience, and I vowed never to again talk babyish or loud to Kevin or anyone with a disability. I would never treat him as younger than he was, and I would never force him to eat anything he doesn't want. And I will never forget what it felt like to be in his shoes, helpless at the mercy of those around me, and frankly, bored. I learned a lot that day, and it brought me another step closer to my very special brother, and only increased my motivation to try to bear his burdens. So finally, thank you. Finally, I wrote a dedication to my brother Kevin, and since he hasn't learned to read yet, maybe that's on our list, Kevin, I'm just going to read it to you, Kevin. Kevin, look at me. All right. To my brother Kevin, words on paper will never convey the depth of my love for you and my empathy for your difficult life's journey. Yet still, you have lived it with more joy than many people who have been given everything. Your heart has been and forever will be entwined with mine as we have shared the two sides of deep suffering. And you have taught me some of life's greatest lessons and caused me to experience some of life's richest emotions. Kevin, I love you, buddy. Our family loves you. Everyone here loves you. So glad you're here. We did it. We wrote a book, Kevin. We wrote a book. Oh my gosh, look at the smile. He's giving you guys a big smile. So does the world really need another book? I guess you guys will be the judge. Thank you.